Let's call the meeting to order at 6:06. May we have a roll call, please?
Director Cesenia.
I'm here, and if for some reason I drop you, I will wander back to this spot now that I know where to get reception.
Perfect. Director Gatchell. Director Ohilsky.
Present.
Vice President Fourcroy. President Womack.
Present. All right. I believe we start with a public hearing. Do you take it away, Ron?
Okay, yes, I was just waiting to make sure you were ready.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So we have a public
You're
hearing.
waiting for direction. Yes.
Okay, I understood.
Thank you. This is a public hearing to adopt ordinance 2021-01, amending and restating Title II of the District Code. So in our effort, staff's effort to keep title up to date, and Title II is the district's water code, we've reviewed the title for outdated policies and references. The recommended changes before you tonight are reflective of the staff's most recent review. So I've kind of summarized the primary changes here. If someone would like to see the specific changes, we do have it in the agenda packet, and in the staff report, I put together a table that would direct you to those changes. So basically, the changes we're requesting are clarification of the property owner's responsibility relative to bill payment if a tenant becomes delinquent, and this is in section 2-01-05. Title II has always had the property owner as the responsible party for any unpaid or paid or unpaid bills. What this does is allows staff to change the billing over to a property owner's name if a tenant becomes delinquent. With the current situation under COVID, with us not being able to shut off water, our staff has been spending quite a bit of time trying to resolve issues between landlords and tenants. So this recommended change would help alleviate that problem. The second one is that we are changing all our references to district specifications and drawings to county public improvement standards. This has been a practice the districts had for many, many years, but for some reason it was never changed in Title II. And then finally, we're changing all references specific to district fees and eliminating those fees and saying that fees will be adopted by district resolution. This will make it easier for us to update fees in the future. In fact, it's been since 2003 since we've updated the fees, and we'll be bringing that back during the budget process. And that's usually how most agencies do handle fee updates. And with that, next slide. This is the recommendation, and I'm available for any questions.
All right,
Hello.
sounds good. Do we have any discussion?
I had a question. If you could go back to the previous slide, I had a question about number 1 there. So the property owner is not getting notice of the bills, but they're only getting notice of if the tenant is not paying them. So I'm not, could you really clarify how that's working? Because that doesn't make any logical sense to me.
We do notify the property owner as soon as a tenant is delinquent on their bill.
So they get notice, they're not getting the bills, but if there is a delinquency, they get a notice right out of the chute rather than waiting until
Yes.
the tenant hasn't paid it. Okay, that was what wasn't clear to me.
Yes.
That's my question.
Okay.
All right. Any other questions on the board? Okay, let's open it up to public comment.
If you'd like to make a public comment and you're on your phone, please dial *9, or if you're on your computer, please raise your hand. There's no public comment at this time.
Okay. I'll, let's see. Any other deliberation, or it seems pretty straightforward?
Yeah, with
maybe
this-
we have a roll.
I would add one
Go ahead.
comment to this, is that we go above and beyond, I think most municipalities do anymore, to try and keep people informed about water use and that kind of thing. I had a personal friend who called me a couple weeks ago. The CSD, we had come out to let him know that his water usage was extremely high and he had a leak going on that he didn't know about on the other side of the meter. And I mean, that's proactive. That's going out and trying to work with our community and let them know exactly what's going on their own property. So I got to say hats off to our crews. And
Yeah, I
I'll move this along.
Yeah, I agree with that. Chuck, my only concern was that if a tenant has something going on that the landlord's not aware of.
Gotta let the landlord know. Gotta let the landlord know. Yeah, absolutely.
Right, it's like what you just raised, that was gonna be my comment here. So if there's an extraordinary usage on a property, rather than after the bills pass due, are we being proactive and letting both the tenant and the landlord know prior to that? That was really the purpose of my initial question, Ron. So if you could just clarify that. So if somebody's water bill is being quadrupled what it was the previous month, are we contacting both the landlord and the tenant, or just the tenant?
Just the tenant, because they are the customer of record. So the way it works, we'll get a high-low report after the meter reads. If there's a high read, our crews or staff, office staff contact the account holder. They are notified of the issue, and then typically the issue is resolved. They do have the option to apply for an adjustment, but it's when a tenant has not paid their bill. This is after 90 days. We notify the landlord that their tenant is delinquent on that bill and that they are ultimately responsible for payment.
Yeah, no, I total agreement with the amendment here, but I just think, based on what you just said, that if after there's a significant, like just say quadruple usage, that after 30 days, if the tenant hasn't responded, we should also contact the property owner earlier, because if there's a leakage, we want to get that stopped as soon as possible.
And I like
Okay.
that, Marshall. I'm trying to figure out how this works because we bill every other month. And I could see a notice going to the property owner the first time we see an extravagant use, but that's still going to be 60 days. I don't know, Ron, you'll have to help us sort through this.
So
But
I don't think it's about extravagant use. It's about if the tenant
non-payment.
isn't paying.
Right. That's true. Those are two different issues.
We don't want our staff is not there to settle disputes between landlords and tenants. So we're just clarifying that ultimately the landlord's responsible, and not to have our staff do the back and forth between the tenant and the landlord. But
Certainly
the
not.
landlord needs to get notified before there's a lien on his property, so I do agree that notifying them early is good.
Yeah, no, that's my
I don't
point.
think it's about extraordinary use is what, I mean.
Well, it is about extraordinary use just because that's where, the major bill is. And I totally agree with what you're saying, Christine, that it's just a matter of, we don't want to get into a back and forth between the landlord and the tenant, but I think we need to, if there is a quote unquote leakage, we need to let the landlord know as soon as possible because they're the ultimate responsible party.
Yeah, I agree. So, all right, so I heard a motion. Do I hear a second?
I guess I'll have to do it since I'm the only one here, other than
Yep.
you.
Oh,
But again, I
okay,
would just, I'm not adding this as part of the motion, but I would just appreciate that if there is a potential leakage, that the landlord be notified about it as soon as possible, rather than waiting until there's a dispute between the landlord and the tenant. That's all I'm saying.
yeah, that sounds good, like a best practices. All right, may we have a roll call vote?
Director Cesena,
Yes.
Director Oholsky,
Yes,
President Womack.
Yes. Okay. Moving on to general action item, the polystyrene, or consideration of a letter to SLO County Integrated Waste Management regarding the repeal of an ordinance prohibiting the use of expanded polystyrene. All right, do you have a presentation for us, Ron?
I do have a short presentation on this as well. Next slide, please. Thought I'd start out with, what is polystyrene and why do we prohibit its use? Sorry, I didn't get all those words out. Expanded polystyrene, which is also known as polystyrene, is a petroleum-based non-biodegradable foam, which the EPA considers a possible human carcinogen, and that such materials can have serious impacts upon human health, wildlife, and aquatic environment. So basically, what we're looking at here is addressing environmental and potential health impacts that polystyrene has on the environment. So a little bit of background. The IWMA adopted an ordinance prohibiting the sale and use of polystyrene back on September 11th in 2019. It was supposed to take effect about 6 months after. It was delayed because right then was when the COVID pandemic hit. So they delayed the implementation of the ordinance for a year. Fast forward to March 10th, 2021, the IWMA board reconsidered the ordinance and passed an introduction of an ordinance to repeal the prohibition, with the final passage scheduled for April 14th, 2021. Next slide, please. So if you recall, at our March 4th board meeting, after hearing public comment regarding the rescinding of the ordinance, our board expressed interest in sending a letter of support of the prohibition to the IWMA board, and Mr. Robert Inns, who is the special district representative on the board. And so per that direction, I did draft a letter, which was attached to our report. And next slide, please. Looking for any direction, changes, or anything else you'd like to add to that letter, and then direct staff to send that letter directly to Mr. Inns and the IWMA board. And with that, I'll take any questions.
This is Chuck. I have no questions, but I would like to have the letter copied maybe to the other CSDs. I would like people to know that we're serious about this issue and that I think we all should speak up.
I do have a question.
Okay.
So Ron, it's my understanding that IWNA took this, or is going to take this revised position based on action by the Board of Supervisors. Could you go back into that background if you have that information, please?
It wasn't an action by the Board of Supervisors. The Board of Supervisors, all 5 are on the board of the IWMA. So it wasn't an action of the Board of Supervisors. There was some, the IWMA is taking a different direction, and Jeff Minery can jump in here and help me at any point, that they are only in the future going to implement mandatory programs from the state, which a polystyrene prohibition is not part of at this point in time. And that position by the IWMA board changed from the time the ordinance was initially adopted back in September 2019. So it's been a shift in the IWMA board position. It has been the majority of the Board of Supervisors on the IWMA board that have wanted this repeal.
Okay, can I jump in, Ron?
You bet.
I would
So-
appreciate that, Jeff,
This-
because
Jeff,
that's confusing to me.
So as you know, I believe the board knows, for the benefit of the public, I am also legal counsel for the IWMA. So I don't want any confusion there. But the issue is that the IWMA has shifted positions, and where they used to be ahead of the curve, so to speak, I guess, banning plastic bags, banning other things. The IWMA got ahead of mandates, and it caused a situation where there was certain members of the IWMA who were unhappy with that role. So they have backed off. There's enough to do right now just to meet state mandates, and they're going to focus right now, board direction, meet state mandates, and one of which is to do what your board is what the board is requested to do right now, but not to do more. And so that's what they're focused on, is not doing more than what is directed by the state. And so that's kind of where they're focusing. I know, I will tell you, even board members who disagree with polystyrene, nobody thinks it's good, I believe, for the environment. That's really not the issue. It's kind of about jurisdictional control. So to the extent the public's interested, board's interested, I would say cue in on those meetings. Next meeting is coming up in a couple weeks. So it's,
Well, thank you
All
for,
right, thanks for,
it's not about
that-
polystyrene. It's about where the IWMA as an agency can legislate within your own jurisdictions.
well, thank you for that clarification, Jeff, because that was my question about just what's the basis for this. So it's really not about polystyrene per se. It's just
Not.
about them not being legislatively proactive, but rather just implementing what the legislature has decided they should do.
It's about the question, the concern is from, and I have no opinion, of course, about any of this, but it's about whether or not the city of San Luis Obispo, city of Paso Robles, city of where these cities or your jurisdictions can legislate within your own boundaries.
No, I appreciate that clarification, because that was the thing that I wasn't sure about, was
Right.
why this is coming up. So now I appreciate that. So that makes sense, that it just,
If I could just clarify something there. 5 of the 7 cities have banned the use of polystyrene. In Los Osos, we cannot legislate because we have
Right.
no authority over it. So
we
this
don't
is-
have, we're part of the county. I totally get that. Yes.
Exactly.
Well, no, I
But
totally
Does that
appreciate the
stop us
response.
from raising our voice? I mean, this reminds me of the air quality standards, where if California had said, well, we'll follow the federal guidelines, we wouldn't be where we're at today in terms of air quality. So do we elect our leaders only from Sacramento, or do we elect local leaders to say, no, we want to get ahead of the curve in Sacramento?
So President Cicenia, you're right. Your voice is not stifled because of this. You can raise your voice. It's just, how do you raise your voice, and where and when and all this. And I will tell you, this issue is not going away.
No, absolutely not. And that's why I want to be, I just want it known where we stand on it, so that we can be part of the groundswell. I mean, There's so many restaurants that don't even use this stuff anymore because they don't know that it's still legal.
People mostly think it's not legal, right?
Correct. That's
You
true.
go around to your local restaurants, especially in coastal communities. They don't even believe they can use styrofoam.
Correct.
So it is the groundswell that you're talking about is totally that's a real. What you're talking about is based in reality. Your voice is not stifled. It's just that the IWMA has said this is not where we're going to put our. We can't throw our hat in the ring right here.
No, and that answered, again, Chuck, I hate to interrupt, but that answered my question about our ability to weigh in on it. So it's not that the IWA is not saying that they're not going to weigh in on it. They're just saying it's not a proactive concern of theirs.
So just to give a little other, so there's going to be changes at the IWMA board member level, just so you're all aware. You are a member of the IWMA as authorized districts. Your role is represented by a gentleman named Robert Enns, who's from Cayucas. We are going to be changing. We have to change the JPA. We have to kind of relook at all those roles within next year. So some of these things will be coming back to your board. So your concerns are acknowledged, I think. And to the extent that the IWMA board is aware of your concerns, I can say that they are.
Well, we have no authority to make a decision for the Integrated Waste Management Authority, but I do want to let them know how we feel about this. And I'm opposed to any kind of a rescission of a ban on this stuff.
Okay.
So now that we have some more information, is that gonna, maybe we could still do a letter, but maybe we need to look at our letter again?
Well, I'd like to hear public comment, but that answers my questions.
Okay, we could open up to public comment and then bring it back and discuss it more, so. Yeah.
If you'd like to
All
make
right,
a
let's
public comment
open-
and you're on your phone, please dial *9. And if you're on your computer, please raise your hand. All right, there is one public comment sent in through the question and answers. It says, I remember when SLO County was ahead of the curve in respect to be environmentally concerned and with recycling in the 1980s, and we needed to deal with the trash issue now. All right, I believe it says Sunset Tom. You just have to unmute yourself.
Hi, my name's Tom Cantwell, and listening to your debate on this issue, I'm really getting the idea you're for doing something or sending something into the IWMAs in support of no polystyrene in our county. Is that what I'm hearing?
Tom, they're not able to respond during public comment. You have 3 minutes to make your comment.
Oh, all right. That's my comment. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Perfect, thank you. All right, Vita, you just have to unmute yourself.
Hi, can you hear me?
You're breaking up, but we can hear you.
Can you hear me? Miller from Osos public comment. I hope you read that. But just because I'm listening to your comments, the IWMA did take a vote to pass an ordinance. Why was it okay then for them to do that? And what has changed? And by the way, by their rescinding it, they're passing another ordinance. So they are saying that they have the right to pass an ordinance. The ordinance that they're going to consider April 14th will upend the ordinance that they passed in 2019, but it's also an ordinance. Now they're trying to say that they don't legislatively have the right to do that. How are they instituted in the first place? And what duties were they given, when the IWMA was first put into action? I would want to know that question. But by not submitting your letter, you're kicking the can down the road, and you're making it seem that we here on these coastal communities are in favor of polystyrenes, and we're not. I am positive if we could take a vote on these coastal communities, it would overwhelmingly pass to ban polystyrenes. I am going to seriously urge you to please send your letter in as is now, and to question why are they allowed, why were they allowed in the first place to pass an ordinance, and now saying they don't have the legislative right, but yet they're going to pass another ordinance to upend the one they already passed. That doesn't make any sense to me. Thank you.
All right, Lynette, you just have to unmute yourself.
Thank you, Lynette Tornatsky. I hope you do send the letter. I think it's important that we take a stand. So please go ahead with it. Thank you.
There's no other public comment at this time.
All right. Thank you for the public comment. I appreciate all the people that took the time to call in and let their thoughts be known. Okay, so let's bring it back to the board. Yes?
Chris, could I ask for Jeff's response to Vita's comments? Because that's, again, the concern that I raised in the beginning. So I would appreciate his response to her questions. Okay,
that would be good.
So just to be super careful, am I on? Yeah, I'm not muted. Just to be clear for the public and the board, I do represent IWMA. I think that if your board has to make a decision on what you want to do on this issue, the IWMA board and position has been clear. They shifted, right? So that's what that is. They have the right to do that. They have the right to shift. But as far as whether or not your board is in a position to send a letter or not a letter, it's up to you. So I'll let it go with that unless there's questions.
Now, Jeff, I still have a question because Vita's question, and again, I'm not trying to put you in a compromised position, but
go ahead.
Her question was, how could they pass the original resolution and then be passing this second resolution that says they shouldn't have done what they did in the first resolution? So my understanding is they had the authority to pass both of them, but could you just go back over why they are saying that they shouldn't have passed the first resolution, if that makes any sense? I'm just trying to answer her question.
Okay, so thank you. They have the right to pass the first resolution. The IWMA has authority to pass resolutions. What happened is the IWMA shifted and decided to only support ordinances that are that enforce state mandates. The only one that is outstanding that is not a state mandated ordinance is this polystyrene ordinance. And so they decided that when they are going to focus on state mandates, they're not going to focus on this ordinance. So it's sitting out there, never enforced because of COVID, that they decided to rescind it rather than have to enforce the one ordinance that is not state mandated.
So pardon me, so it has really nothing to do with the content of the resolution or the ordinance, pardon me. It just has to do with what they're seeing as their basic authorities of what to deal with.
Their mission statement. They're shift to their mission statement. They're not saying they love polystyrene. I would think that even the people who are voting for or against this, no one's saying they love styrofoam. It's about what is IWMA's purpose.
Okay. Thank you for that clarification, because that was what I was trying to understand. Because so it has nothing, I don't want to say nothing, but it's not directly related to the polystyrene. It's more directly related to what they see as their mission in implementing state mandates.
And
Okay,
in my understanding of the board's direction, that's what it is.
okay, well, thank you for that
So-
clarification. I appreciate that.
So I'd like a little clarification. Is it about enforcement, that not wanting to use resources on enforcement?
So I think it's not about enforcement, it's about, I think, policy.
Okay,
If I could jump in here, we're getting into the weeds about IWMA business. It's what the question we have before us tonight is if and that we've agendized, if we agree with the original ordinance or not. I really think we're kind of straying off the path here.
Well, Ron, the
Okay.
only reason I'm bringing this up is because I just want to make sure that our response is within quote unquote our authority to respond. So I don't want to send a letter that says we're outside. We're trying to push IWA outside of their authority. So yeah, I mean, it's been clarified to my satisfaction, but that was the reason I've been talking about it, bringing it up, is just I didn't want to try to expand their authority, if that makes sense.
Well, it's been clear they have the authority to pass anything they want. It's policy then
Right.
on their side.
Right. No, Jeff did a good job answering my question, so I understand it.
I move that we move this letter along to the IMWA and yeah, I mean, this is why sit back and wait for leadership from somewhere else. If California had done that, we wouldn't have the clean air standards that we have now. We wouldn't have the clean vehicles that we have now. So we have this authority. Let's take it. Let's exercise it and say we don't want this stuff here. And I move to approve the letter.
so it sounds like the IWMA has decided to not push the boundaries, but I think we're kind of hearing from the community, we would still like to be out in front of these issues.
Chris, that's a good point. We overwhelmingly heard from the community. We had more letters on this issue than we have had since the Move the Sewer days. And I believe it was unanimous that we take a stand on this against polystyrene. I don't know if we received any letters in favor of that position to not to rescind the order. So if I'm wrong, I don't know, but the community's behind it. I think we need to move ahead with this.
Right. I didn't see any against.
Mm-mm.
But as president, I'm not allowed to second, right?
I don't know about that.
It's fine. It's fine. Go ahead, second.
All right, I second it. Can we have a vote, please?
Director Sesenya,
Yes.
President Womack,
Yes.
Director Ohulski,
Yes.
All right. Let's take public comments for any items not on the agenda.
if you'd like to make a public comment and you're on your phone, please dial *9. And if you're on your computer, please raise your hand. There's no public comment at this time.
All right, sorry, I had to unmute myself. All right, does anyone want to pull anything from we do administrative and committee reports. Let's see, do we have, oh, sorry?
No, I don't want to pull anything right now, but this is probably a Jeff question, but after the report is given, can I pull it then, or do I have to pull it now?
You pull it anytime you want. pull it anytime
Okay.
you want.
So I may want to pull something after the report's given, but right now I'm not prepared to pull.
Oh, you're not going to tell us which report?
Well, I don't want to unless I have to. Let's put it that way.
You want to ask questions?
Okay.
You can do that.
No, I know that. I just, let me just see after the report's given,
All right.
whether
All right. All right.
comfortable or not.
All right.
All right. So do we have someone from the fire department to give a report?
Yeah, Paul Province is here.
All right.
All right, been a little while since I've done the report, and I don't think I've actually done it at all since I took over. But just give a quick synopsis of the calls. We're still seeing a steady increase in call volume. We got 124 calls for the month of March, 140 for February. Hang on, sorry about that. And 139 for January. We're up to 403 calls for the year so far. So that's a little bit of an increase where we've been at, just behind last year, or just ahead of last year. Not really seeing much calls for service outside of the medical realm. We have had some vehicle accidents and some small fires in the area. Today, we just had a fire over in the Daisy Hills mobile home park, but it was just confined to the bathroom with a little bit of smoke damage. We're still working through the COVID-19 pandemic things. We're starting to relax some of the restrictions that we've had mandated by the unit chief and CAL FIRE. So you'll start to see us out in the community a little bit more, but we're still limiting public contact at the fire station. So if you do come by, we ask that you go to the front door and use the phone, and then we'll get the appropriate staff. Special programs and projects. Obviously, we're coming up into the green up mode with all the grass, and so as the grass grows, it's going to start to die. Be expecting weed abatement inspections to start to commence, and we're going to be looking to have people completed with that by June 1st. We're going to be a little more stringent this year as we had quite a bit of rain this year, so the grass cop's going to be pretty heavy. So we'll be out enforcing that and getting those notices out to folks. In conjunction with that, I just met with Fire Safe Council today, and we're having some discussions about getting a community chipping event going in May. We're looking at a target date of May 16th, and that's just fresh off the press. We'll have more details. They'll be coming out via these meetings, possibly in the water bills, and via social media. And a report.
Excellent. Thank you for joining our meeting and giving a verbal report. It's nice to hear those again. Do we have someone from the Sheriff's Department?
Yes, good evening, Commander Stuart MacDonald from the Sheriff's Coast Station here in Los Osos. Good evening to the board and to staff and members of the public. My verbal report tonight will vary slightly from the written report in your agenda, in that I will be verbally reporting all activity in the month of March, whereas the written report sent in for the agenda ended March 25th. So this will include the remaining days in March. For the month of March, we had 72 calls for service in Los Osos. Over the course of the month, the deputies generated 71 reports from the station. The reports that are generated don't come necessarily from calls for service. The reports can be self-initiated activity that is in a written report, and and calls for service don't always end up in a written report. So the fact that there's 72 calls for service and 71 reports generated, they're not really related to one another. We had 2 assault and battery reports. One involved someone who was assaulted with a stick and suffered some minor injury. A suspect was identified in that assault, but ultimately the victim didn't want prosecution. The second assault was basically a fist fight between two subjects that knew each other, and we did take a battery crime report for that incident. We had 41 disturbance calls, and I just picked out about 12 of those were loud music reports and party complaints. Because of COVID, the party complaints, there were only 3 of those, and the remaining loud music didn't involve gatherings. Of the 41 disturbance calls, that accounted for 9 of the generated written reports, and of those reports, it included 4 arrests for either drug or alcohol intoxication. We had 4 burglary reports. 2 of those burglaries involved items taken from locked vehicles. 1 was a residential burglary, and then 1 of those calls for service was actually someone reporting a person breaking into a vehicle. However, when we arrived, we found that it was simply the vehicle's owner trying to get in because they had locked the keys in the car. We had 6 theft reports. We had items stolen from an unlocked vehicle. We had two reports of items stolen from unlocked vehicles. 1 theft report involved items stolen out of somebody's front yard. And then we had a stolen bicycle report. And that bicycle was actually recovered during the course of our call for service, and the victim didn't want prosecution against the person who ultimately brought that bicycle back. We had 4 vandalisms, including a broken car window, a broken electrical outlet cover, a report of juveniles hitting mailboxes. In that instance, no permanent damage was done to the mailboxes. And then 1 vandalism report was a known subject retaliating against another and poured hot sauce on the victim's car and around their yard. We had 2 mail thefts. Although the one that occurred in the month of March was in the 500 block of Mitchell Drive. There was a second one reported, but it was a late report, and the mail theft actually occurred in January. However, our detective bureau had recovered some of that stolen mail and contacted the victim who was in the 1500 block of Los Osos Valley Road near its intersection with Willow Drive. So that generated a report for the January theft of mail. So the only reported mail theft in March was in the 500 block of Mitchell. We had 1 telephone scam, and that scam was the Amazon scam, where somebody calls purporting to be an employee of Amazon and that there's some problem with the user's account. The victim in that scam did not provide any personally identifiable information, so there was no loss, but that was the only reported phone scam for the month of March. We had 4 suspicious circumstance reports, and none of those reports none of those generated any written reports. So those circumstances were investigated and determined to be benign. The deputies that served your community engaged in 71 enforcement stops, and enforcement stops include vehicle stops, pedestrian stops, and bicycle stops. They also engaged in 53 preventative patrol activities. That is things like foot patrol, extra patrol of known crime areas, and those kinds of preventative patrol activities. And then lastly, I just want to point out some statistics for Palisades, because that is an area that is of interest in the community. Over the month, there were 41 events, I'll call them, on Palisades. 29 of those were proactive events. So either pedestrian stops or vehicle stops. Those were initiated by the deputies working for you in the community. And that meant that 12 of the events there were actual calls for service where we responded to somebody in the community calling. Those numbers are reduced somewhat from February. There was more activity on Palisades in February than there was in March. And hopefully that trend is continuing as the deputies spend more and more time trying to do proactive enforcement in that area. That's the end of my report, and I'm happy to take questions from the public or from the board.
Excellent. Thank you. Do we have any questions? So I have a question. In the Palisades, is that to deal with unhoused people? Is that why there's more activity going on in Palisades?
Yeah, the short answer is yes. There's a number of unhoused people that are living in vehicles along Palisades, mostly north of the library. And that's a circumstance that is challenging and has been exceedingly challenging during the COVID pandemic. However, at the administrative level at the county, they are looking at putting in some resources that will allow us to once again be able to do some enforcement of existing ordinances such as the 72-hour parking and other ordinances will allow us to start basically having those individuals move to other locations.
All right, so it's just part of a bigger issue.
Yes,
Does
it is.
anyone else have
Yeah, Chris, I had a question.
Oh, please.
Regarding the mailbox thefts, quote unquote. I know in the past they've been significantly higher than they are in this last report. Is there a reason for that, or is it just for reporting issues? Because I know in the past we've had significant mailbox theft reports.
Yeah, so pardon me. A lot of times when we get mail thefts that occur, it's not one mailbox, and so one event will lead to maybe 8 or 10 reports.
Okay.
And so I think what we're seeing here is that there probably only was the one, well, I won't say that. There was only one event reported to us from the 500 block of Mitchell. Any other mail thefts that occurred in the community, and there probably were some, however, they were not reported to the sheriff's office.
Right. So that in the past, it's one of two things: either A, they're not reported, or B, there was multiple reports of the same theft item. Okay, that clarifies my question. Thank you.
Uh,
All right. Thank you so much for your report.
Okay, I look forward to being with you again next month.
Yes, sounds good. Ron, do you give the utilities and general manager report?
Yes, thank you. Typically, we don't go through all the stats in the utilities report. If there's any questions, of course, happy to answer those. I did want to point out in the update portion, that we're making progress towards getting the 8th Street Upper Aquifer Well project out to bid. We're pushing hard with our consultants to get us the information to be able to bring that to you at your May meeting. But it is nice to see finally some movement on that project after, I believe it's been over 2 years really since the project began. With that, I just have a couple of items on the general manager report. I did talk a little bit last month about the COVID-19 Relief Act. That is now, everything's in place. We encourage anyone that's experiencing problems with paying back rent, but even for us, more importantly, this does apply to utility bills. There is a website that is in the staff or the general manager report, housingiskey.com. Alicia, our billing person, is really up to speed on it. If anyone has any questions or feel like they qualify, please call us and we will help you or help direct you to the right resources for that. Just real quick on the Basin Management Committee, we did have a meeting on March 25th. One of the interesting parts was a presentation by a company called Purolite, which is developing a resin-based separation process that can eliminate a lot of the issues we have with the brine from treating for nitrates. It's in experimental stage. We may try to do a pilot program out here, but it was a very good presentation. And finally on that, we had a robust discussion about the preliminary findings that will come out in the annual report. Any citizen or interested party that is interested in the water issues out here in Los Osos, I really encourage you to follow the Basin Management Committee. And typically we have links on that on our website. And with that, also please join our mailing list so you can stay up on all the issues that the CSD is working on. With that, I'll answer any questions.
Well, you took away my BMC report, Ron, so thank you for that.
Sorry about that, Marshall. I have to say,
No, that's okay.
The meeting was 3 hours long and Marshall did a great job on facilitating that meeting. It was a great meeting, but extremely long.
Yeah, well, thank you for that. But anyways, I won't give my BMC report. I just wanted to put that out there since you covered everything already.
All right. Excellent. Any other questions for Ron? All right. Thank you, Ron. Next, we have a LOCAC report from Marshall.
Sorry, I was trying to unmute myself. Yeah, I gave the LOCAC report for the CSD, and we had the presentation from the sustainability group at the LOCAC meeting, which we're also going to have at the BMC at our next meeting. So I don't know, Chris, if there's anything else I need to include from that, but that was basically it. I think it was pretty straightforward and a simple meeting.
Yeah, I think that was the main agenda item. Yeah, I agree. All right. Thanks, Marshall. Any questions about the LOCAC report? All right. Let's see. Utility Advisory Committee. Did we lose Chuck or?
He's on there. He came off and on for like a minute. So check it, *6 to unmute yourself.
All right, you're unmuted.
I apparently missed something. There was a request for me to be unmuted.
Oh, did you have a Utilities Advisory Committee report?
I don't have anything to add what Ron would have presented, except to say that the committee is very appreciative of the capital improvement program reports, the way it's broken out and how we're going to pay for it for the next few years. We do have some big ticket items coming up, and it's just nice to be in a place where we can deal with it without worrying about whether we can. So that's about all I would add.
All right, thank you for that. Does anyone have any questions? All right, so the Finance Advisory Committee, the committee recommended we receive and file the financials. Oh, I don't have it in front of me.
The warrants and the register. I can say that from
And the warrants.
previous experience, Chris. I'm sorry.
Thank you. I know you always say, yeah, and the warrants and the register. Yeah, it was a good meeting. Okay, do we have any directors' announcements of district or community interest or reports or any continued education taken?
Ron covered my BMC report, so I have nothing further to add to that.
All right. And
No,
I don't.
Either.
Okay, good. We didn't have any outstanding questions, did we?
No, we did not.
Okay. So do we, let's see.
You need to take public comment first.
Oh, okay, thank you. Let's open it to
You're
public
welcome.
comment on the consent agenda, I believe.
Normally you check to see if somebody wants to pull something first.
Oh, okay. Does anyone want to pull anything from the consent agenda?
No, my question got answered, so I'm not going to pull the item that I had said that I may have, so I'm fine.
Okay.
I'm fine as well.
All right. Excellent. All right, now let's open it up for public comment.
If you'd like to make a public comment and you're on your phone, please dial *9. And if you're on your computer, please raise your hand. There's no public comment at this time.
All right.
So Chris, I'll make a motion to receive and file the administrative reports and approve the warrants and registers.
I will second that.
Excellent. Thank you. Laura, can you do a roll call vote for us?
Director Oholsky?
Yes.
Director Sesenia?
Yes.
President Womack?
Yes. All right. Does anyone on the board have any future agenda items?
Not here.
All right.
No,
Does anyone have any?
But wait,
Oh, go
Chris,
ahead.
I would like to follow
Yes.
up on one thing. At our last meeting, when we had the presentation about the electronic charging stations, we directed Ron to go ahead and work on working with the county to potentially put in a recharging station at South Bay Community Park in the parking lot there. I would appreciate an update on that next month, because I know the initial grant period passed in March and we didn't obviously meet that deadline, which we weren't able to do. But I would appreciate an update on that, where we stand for the future, adding that to a future agenda if we could, to next month's agenda. I would appreciate that. Thank you.
All right, sounds good. I think I heard they're trying to put more federal funding behind that too. So it'd be nice if we were in the position to take advantage of future funds.
Yeah, so I just would like an update next month. That's all I'm asking.
That sounds good. I love it. All right. Do any board members have any closing comments?
Happy Easter.
And April Fool's Day.
Oh.
Oh, thank you for bringing that up, Chuck. Now we're all fools.
Hey, we hung in there. Good meeting, and I appreciate the dialogue that went on about polystyrene.
Yes.
Yeah,
So
I
I'd like to
appreciate my
thank
questions being answered too. Yes, for the
Yeah,
polystyrene, because I
absolutely. We
that
wanna
was
know
kind of
what's
confusing.
behind it.
Exactly.
Yeah, thanks, Jeff, for some extra insight. I mean,
Well,
we wouldn't have known, so that was handy to have somebody that's at the meeting.
I know. Thank you. Hey, everyone have a good night.
All right, well, I appreciate everybody that came to give public comment and joined our meeting, and I appreciate the staff for the great job that they always do. And thank you to the board of directors that made our meeting. I now adjourn the meeting. Have a good night. Happy Easter.
Good night.
Happy Easter. Good night.
Good night.